One of the world's greatest enduring mysteries, is it not a mystery anymore? For decades now, the Bermuda Triangle has captured imaginations with stories of vanishing planes and ships. But now, a new scientific theory claims to have finally cracked the code. The truth is stranger than any myth, it seems. The reason is pretty simple, it seems. Take a look.
The legend of the Bermuda Triangle is woven into the very fabric of maritime and aviation history. It's a story of eerie disappearances, of vessels and aircraft swallowed by the sea without a trace, leaving behind an unexplained silence. But now, after decades of speculation, one scientist claims to have found the definitive answer. The patch of sea between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda was once associated with numerous disappearances, and its lack of media attention, in recent years, has only served to increase the enigma surrounding it. But now, after decades of speculation, one scientist claims to have found the definitive answer. Oceanographer Simon Boxall from University of Southampton says that the culprit behind the mysterious vanishings isn't aliens, sea monsters, or time portals. It's something far more terrifying: rogue waves. Rogue waves are not the average sea swells. They are massive, unpredictable walls of water that can reach twice the height of surrounding waves. According to Boxall, the Bermuda Triangle is a perfect storm for these deadly phenomena. The powerful currents of the Gulf Stream, combined with converging storms from the north and south, create a lethal combination that can generate waves powerful enough to snap even the toughest ships in two. This natural explanation is supported by data and has been backed by maritime experts who argue that the number of incidents in the Bermuda Triangle is not statistically higher than in any other major shipping corridor, particularly those prone to hurricanes. For decades, the legend of Bermuda Triangle was fueled by Hollywood thrillers and conspiracy theorists. But the real story is all about physics, weather, and geography.
First, there was trade, tariffs, and now open waters. Amid a widening row between the US and China, Beijing has called out America's freedom of navigation operations, challenging their legal basis. In a first-of-its-kind report, in fact, Beijing has hit out at the US against what it calls gunboat diplomacy. And to build its case, China has reportedly challenged Washington on multiple fronts. First, China has accused America of practically inventing several legal concepts like international waters, saying it does not exist in the contemporary law of the sea. And then China goes on to accuse America, saying that such operations risk threatening regional peace and stability, and for using military force to pressurize other countries into disrupting maritime order. Nothing new here in a way, as China has been raising such concerns for a long time now. For years, the US Navy has been conducting the freedom of navigation operations in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in the South China Sea, which has triggered friction between the two sides time and again. But this is in a way the first time that China has decided to take on the US Navy in its backyard legally, accusing America of using its military to create a threat perception. And in the report, Beijing also accused the US Navy of repeatedly entering into territorial waters of other states worldwide without prior notification or authorization, as well as defining exclusive economic zones that suit its interests. And China's allegations against the US are strong, also pointed. But was this always the case? As per the report, American directives were initially against countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines, which shifted support to China since 2007. when the country started emerging as a key competitor to the United States. Besides being so-called order and rules set by the US, these freedom of navigation directives come with political and strategic significance, something which may very well affect international equations and operations in the contested zone. And while China questions the legal basis of US actions, Beijing also has reportedly conducted similar operations in the EEZ and territorial waters of other countries, including the US and its allies, thus warranting a further and detailed review of international navigation laws in foreign waters. And here's also why India is standing firm and not bending to Trump's tariff tantrums. By its own admission, the US is profiting from the Ukraine war, and the hypocrisy is staggering. While America punishes India with heavy tariffs for buying Russian oil, Washington is cashing in by selling weapons to Europe, which are then resold to Ukraine at a 10% markup. So while the US accuses India of so-called profiteering from Russian oil, it is openly admitting to making money through arms deals. Speaking to Fox News, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, and I'm quoting, "We sell weapons to the Europeans who then sell them to the Ukrainians. And President Trump takes a 10% markup on the weapons. Perhaps this 10% will cover the cost of air cover," quote unquote. And then in another interview, Bessent slammed India for buying Russian oil, refining it, and then exporting petroleum products. Bessent said, and I'm quoting, "They are just profiteering, buying cheap Russian oil, reselling it as product," quote unquote. Quick question to Bessent. Are you not doing the very same thing that you're trying to accuse India of doing? Or does America only see what it wants to see? Or worse, does America really believe it has some preordained right to do what it doesn't allow others to do? You see, Bessent claims that Indian refiners made $16 billion in excess profits, which benefited some of the richest families in India, quote unquote. That's the claim. America has even floated secondary tariffs against India, remember, but not on China, even though Beijing is a major Russian energy buyer. Why this differential treatment, you ask? The simple answer, one word, hypocrisy. According to Bessent, the Trump administration views China differently because it was a Russian customer. Long before the Ukraine war started, that's what they want you to believe. But the truth really is, Trump wants to give China an easier ride, to allow broader trade talks on China's rare earth minerals and also to avoid disrupting imports ahead of the Christmas season. But coming back to the United States, Bessent made these comments to try and justify the Trump administration's hefty 50% tariffs on Indian goods, supposedly as punishment for buying Russian oil. But Washington cannot hide the sheer hypocrisy here, the utter absurdity of its own arguments. As the Indian government has repeatedly pointed out, the European Union imports more from Russia than India, even today, despite stopping trade with Russia since the Ukraine war started in 2022. Yet, the EU and China have faced no such punishment from the United States. So, if the goal was to try and crush Russia's earnings so it cannot fund the war, exempting major customers and targeting a strategic ally like India seems to make no sense. And if, according to the US, India is indeed guilty of what it says, profiteering from the war, then isn't the Trump administration in no position to lecture India if it itself is making money from the Ukraine war? Remember, Trump himself boasted during his re-election campaign that he could end the war in 24 hours. So here's a reminder to the United States. The world remembers. The path to peace in Ukraine passes through Washington. But then the bigger story is also about how Europe and the US remain deeply tied to this energy trade. Despite the sweeping sanctions, Russia has continued to earn massive sums from energy exports. Since February 2022, Moscow has collected close to $1 trillion from fossil fuels, with over $300 billion coming from sanctioning nations. The EU alone paid $242 billion, making it Russia's single largest energy customer. Russian gas exports to Europe even rose by up to 20% in 2024, while half of Russia's LNG still flows into the EU. India, by contrast, accounts for 13% of Russia's fossil fuel revenues, less than Europe's 23%. And the bigger winners have been American and European companies, by the way. US LNG now covers nearly half of Europe's imports, with Brussels signing a $750 billion deal to secure gas supplies. $750 billion. American oil majors like ExxonMobil and Chevron saw profits jump 125% post the war as the prices spiked. And even today, Europe continues to buy Russian fuels indirectly, while also paying 4 times the US domestic rate for American gas. Analysts argue that if profits are the measure, it is not India, but Western energy giants and governments that have benefited the most from the war-driven energy realignment. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.